Good evening, folks. This is Deb, and this is the Factivist Report for Sunday, the 27th of October. It's, 2 weeks to D-Day, folks, so I hope you're all awake. This is Dave and Shoshana's show, so I am going to let Dave do the honors. So, Dave?
So Deb and I have been covering the election for what, a year and a half now, I think.
Yep.
We've been covering uh, all sorts of candidates, all sorts of issues. Now we're going to talk about one specific proposition, and that is Prop 1 in New York. And it is getting a lot of attention uh, because it will expand uh, the groups that are included in the non-discrimination clause of the Constitution. Just to introduce some of the things, here is Shoshana. I want Shoshana to answer one question, though, because I know she's a high school music teacher. Where do you get all the time to indoctrinate those kids? I mean, I was in the school system for a brief period of time, and I know when you had 5 minutes extra to work on a lesson, that was something. So for them just to come up with that logistically is
I just want to
ridiculous.
know where the operating rooms are.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
all
no,
I'm.
so I teach I did teach high school for 10 years. I now work
Okay.
more at the collegiate level, but I will tell
Okay.
you,
Okay.
um I'm a parent of school-age kids.
Right.
You in the nurse's office, you can't even get a Tylenol. Like
Exactly.
you can get Band-Aid, you can get an ice pack, but you're not getting much more from the nurse's office. So any arguments about this stuff are just it's so patently false and ludicrous. And I think critical thinking, which is what we teach kids, and challenging kids to grapple with, you know, concepts and ideas and experiences outside of their own lived experience is what education is. And does that move kids to sometimes think differently than the generations that came before them? Absolutely. But that's not indoctrination.
No,
That's
that's what we want, right?
yeah,
I was really
it's
different.
progress.
I was
And my,
really
my
different
kids,
from my sisters.
yes, my kids are wiser and better than I was at their age, and I celebrate that. I'm not trying to hold that back. I want them to be better than I was, and I
Any
think that
push?
is,
Yep.
yeah, it's fear. It is
Yep.
fear of progress and
Yep.
change.
Yep.
Well, any push for true education reform, and we're not talking about the whole parental rights thing, and I'm not saying that parents don't have rights.
Oh
Please
yeah.
stop. But civics education, education on how to research, on how to criticize the press.
Hmm.
Shoshana, Deb, and I were just talking about the Wall Street Journal in an article, which we'll go into. Not all of this isn't just clear cut. None of it's clear cut. There's a lot of gray everywhere, everywhere.
It's
And
the same thing with the press not covering Trump being a fascist. It's inappropriate to say that. Why is it inappropriate to say that? He's a fascist. I
right,
said he was a Nazi today. He's a Nazi. He's in Madison Square Garden tonight at a hate fest. I've seen
right,
some of the clips, and he is clearly what he is, and the media is a bunch of cowards, as far as I'm concerned. Bezos bowing down to the orange slob there after meeting with him and then pulling Harris's endorsement. His editors are quitting on him, and they should,
right,
you know.
right, right. So, so what what I wanted to do from the very beginning, I saw Shoshana and I are part of well, actually, Shoshana runs it. I just started watching it or looking at it again, reading it again. She has a group called Suffolk Progressives, and there are a couple of people in Suffolk Progressives that are concerned. And I'm not telling people not to be concerned. But what I will say is that the way this law is written, the way it is has been developed, and the way it is to be interpreted, it is talking about enforcing current law.
Hmm.
I want people to hear that. It's current law. The reason that Nassau County is an issue right now is that Biden, when he put his legislation in about Title IX, he didn't necessarily protect transgender sports, but he did put a ban on blanket banning of transgender sports. He acknowledged that there is a real concern about the health and well-being of students.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he said no blanket bans. And what did a Nassau County executive do? Blanket ban on transgender sports. So that starts the whole thing.
Mhm.
Understand that this proposition, number one, is statewide. However, it is getting national attention. I do have an article from The Nation that talks about how expansive this proposition is. Expansive meaning covering gender identity, sex in terms of protection of abortion rights and personal sovereignty rights. I will say the GOP keeps on saying, oh my God, there's going to be unintended consequences. I have articles in here from Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, pardon me, MAGA, saying they don't want women to vote. If you have this constitutional amendment, New Yorkers will be protected. Okay, yeah, there could be unintended consequences, but not the ones you're talking about. Not, oh, and by the way, I'm just going to get into this too. Child consent laws. Lee Zeldin and some of these people are trying to turn it around and say that children are going to be able to do whatever they want because of the ban on age discrimination. There are child consent laws out there.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are things you legally as a minor need parental
Cannot do.
approval for. That is the law. This doesn't change the law. And, I think all it does is expand who is protected. I think that right now we have laws in place, but we all know laws can be overturned. And we've seen that. And we've also seen how long it has taken New York to get to a place where we could even talk about some of these things. And as we were saying
Right.
earlier, before we started recording, New York State did not pass protections for transgender people until 2019. They didn't pass the Reproductive Health Act until 2019. So as much as this is a quote unquote blue state, we have not had those full protections under the law. And we've had folks who have stopped it. We had a Republican Senate until 2019 that blocked those laws from coming to a vote. So putting this in the Constitution basically says no matter who is in charge, we will not be able to discriminate against LGBTQ plus folks. We will not be able to discriminate based on pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes. And this just says no one is messing with our rights, no matter who's the governor, no matter who's in charge of the legislature. Our rights are sacrosanct. And, I think that codifying that in our state constitution is exactly what we need. And, we've seen it. We've seen it over the last couple of years, just the way with the fall of Roe, how state legislatures have been coming for some of our most vulnerable populations. And this protects New Yorkers in a way that I think we desperately need.
And this is our one shot at doing it. It had to go through the legislature just to become a proposition. It
Yeah,
had
so
to go through the legislature twice.
The
The
process has to go
process
through it
takes,
twice, two
yep,
consecutive years. Both houses have to pass it, and it has to be two different sessions. This is where it gets interesting. So that way it could be
okay.
potentially two different sets of people. So it passed the New York State Legislature in 2022 and 2023 to be able to get on the ballot. So any constitutional amendment, any ballot initiative has to go through twice at the state level. So it was a lot of work to get it here. And then once we got it on the ballot, one of the Republican members of the legislature sued to get it off the ballot, and then we had to fight to get it back on. So this has been a long fought battle to codify our rights.
You just made a good point. Who was that legislature?
It was somebody, I don't remember the name. It was an assembly member from upstate New York.
Okay.
I'd have to look it up, but yeah.
One point that I want to make before we get too much farther into this is that this is not a substitute for voting for your candidates.
Right.
No, and
by
I actually
any
think,
stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I would also say one of the things I did when I started researching this is I found out that every Republican legislator in the state houses in both houses from Suffolk County voted against putting this on the ballot.
Right. And I'd
And
like to know why. Yeah.
that should tell you something. When
Yeah.
every single one of them, says we don't want you to have the chance to vote on your rights.
Right.
Right.
There it is.
So one of the things that I thought I was pretty proficient in this particular proposal, and then Shoshana gave me a couple of articles, and I was like, oh, okay. There are a couple of other things that are part of this. Age discrimination is one. You think of how decimated the elderly population was, and we lost a governor over it during COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. You think of the housing crisis. I saw that Kathy Hochul is proposing elderly housing in an area. You think of all of these things. You also think of when discrimination by disability discrimination.
Yeah.
Immediately, I think of the workplace. Okay. At my job, if you are brought into the office for a discipline or for any official act and you are hearing impaired, you are entitled to an interpreter. There are certain things in law that you are entitled to. And someone in the assembly, God bless her, she's due, ironically enough, she mentioned something in terms of the MTA discrimination against the disabled 2020. Okay. And Deb's been working on the ERA forever. When was the ERA proposed, Deb?
Oh, hell no. I don't even
The
remember
70s.
the 70s.
1973. I looked at it.
It's like the Employment Non-Discrimination Act.
Right.
For gay people. I was working on that in the 90s when I was working at Millipore. My company became the first company to sign on in Massachusetts on a national level. And it's been floating around ever since. We can't get the Equal Rights Amendment passed. We can't get that passed. We can't get anything passed on a national level lately. I mean, it's over the years, it's been crazy.
And I also think that's why it's so important to get it passed at the state level. When we think about the movements have always started in the states. Marriage equality started as ballot referendums in the states.
Right.
And I think that if we can get this over the line, this is a game changer.
Right.
And that is why they're working so hard to get rid of it, because if New York leads on this, this is a game changer for the nation.
Right. And one thing I know this is about New York, but I just want to mention this, my whole mindset is right on where you guys are. And I'm thinking on a national level, we're never going to be safe on a national level unless we could somehow have a constitutional amendment that codifies rights for everybody in this country, because it will always be a battle between, it will always be a cultural battle. That always hinders people from actually getting into a discussion, Republican and Democrat, on actual issues. We spend our time trying to keep people above the water in the United States. If you listen to the garbage about immigrants and what they say about gay people, unless we can somehow make this process work to get a constitutional amendment, I think the Bill of Rights is too damn squishy. I really think we're not what we were in 17, whatever the hell that thing was passed. Way back in those days, we're a whole different country now. We weren't intended to be stagnant. We need to move forward on something like that too.
So I mentioned that article in The Nation. It does mention that over 20 states do have an equal rights amendment in their constitution. However, only Nevada, ironically enough, has something as strong as New York.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here is a point that I really want to make, that the GOP constantly does this. They constantly complain that a law is redundant or that legislation is redundant. This proposition is a guardrail to keep someone like Lee Zeldin from ripping apart everything in one term. It will be extremely difficult to fight this. And by the way, I also have just a random lawsuit from an African American gentleman who was saying that he was being discriminated against and fired because of his race. This isn't going away just because you put a group's name on a piece of paper. There has to also be enforcement. This is just the beginning of the first step.
Yeah, yeah, the implementation will be incredibly important. And I think that I've grown to really love how expansive this amendment is. And I know that the focus is on abortion, and rightly so. But I think, what Deb said that really resonated with me is that they keep dividing us up, and they keep pitting us against one another. And the truth is, the only way we overcome this is by having expansive freedoms for everyone who has ever faced discrimination because of these qualities that, are they are who we are. You know what I mean? Like these are not things that, we change about ourselves. It is who we are. And I think that this strengthens our collective argument in such a powerful way. And again, I think that is why they are working so hard to defeat it.
Yeah.
And spreading so much fear because it is such a powerful amendment.
They are working extremely hard to dismantle the union movement right now, which is at a crossroads at this point. They're literally attacking the National Labor Relations Board, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, OSHA. They're attacking all of it. They're attacking all the systems while at the same time saying, "What do you need that for? You have the NLRB." And in the meantime, they're attacking it and trying to get rid of it.
No, I mean, and I think that it is the same, just, what this country does to us over and over is like, well, don't you have enough? It's like a real gaslighting. And no, we don't. We do not. And it is okay to ask for everything that you deserve.
Yep.
And this, I think this amendment does that. And I love it for how bold and unapologetic it is in what it asks for. We need more of that.
It's like, I don't get what some people, like, why do they think we're here? Right? I mean, we're not here to bow down to government. Government's here to protect us. We're the drivers. We're the drivers of this thing, and I don't understand why I hear some people that are just like me say, well, I don't know if we should have a bigger, hourly wage than we do nationwide. I said, are you serious? I said, we were having the fight for 15 back in 2016. We need the fight for 35 about right now, as far as I'm concerned. When you look at that stuff, it's crazy that I hear the average people have been kind of brainwashed into thinking that we're here to serve the government. The government's here to serve us. That's what the government is.
So I want to read the actual proposal, just the basic, like 2 paragraphs of it. This is from State Senator Brad Holman Siegel's webpage. It is the amendment. This proposal amends Article 1, Section 11 of the New York Constitution. Section 11 now protects against unequal treatment based on race, color, creed, and religion. This proposal will amend the act to also protect against unequal treatment based on ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy and pregnancy outcomes, as well as reproductive health care and autonomy. The amendment allows laws to prevent or undo past discrimination. And then when voting on this proposal, you can choose yes, but put those protections in, no, leaves them out. And it also says, and this stuff is like candy to Deb and me because we've been doing this for a few years. No person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws of this state or any subdivision thereof. No person shall, because of race, color, ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, creed, or religion, or sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy, be subjected to any discrimination in his or her or their civil rights. And by the way, it does include men. because it includes age and it also
Right.
includes disability.
Right.
And
Okay.
sexual orientation.
And sexual orientation. Not all men are straight men. Bears civil rights by any other person or any firm, corporation, or institution by the state or state agency or subdivision of the state pursuant to law. That's very important to read
Yeah.
because what that says is that this is not superseding any existing law.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
the truth is they're just stoking fear. And, I think you and I were talking about what happened during the pandemic in really instilling fear. They created these boogeymen, whether it was, the masks or the vaccines or critical race theory or whatever book it was.
right.
This is the latest
Chinese,
iteration of,
actual people,
yeah,
actual people. Yeah.
trying to scare parents that they don't have control over their kids' lives. And that's simply not true.
Right. You're absolutely right. That is not true. Again, it creates a paranoia out there and it just gets worse. That's why
I
remaining silent is just in the face of all this. I find it hard to do. I'm 70 years old. I'd rather be doing none of this. I'd rather be sitting around and, doing stuff that makes me relax instead of having my blood pressure go through the roof every day when I come home from work and look at my
Right.
screen,
yeah.
Right.
I think the thing is there is, as a parent, and I have school-age children, there's a lot to be anxious about in this world.
Yep.
When you think of your children, when I think about gun violence, when I think about the rising cost of housing and student debt, and when you think about climate change, there's plenty as a parent I
Yep.
worry about.
Yep.
Right.
This isn't it. And I think what opponents of this ballot initiative are doing is they're taking fear and misdirecting it.
Right.
And I think that's the thing, because fear is natural as a parent because all you want to do is protect your children.
Right.
They're playing upon that fear and misdirecting it.
Yep.
So I want Deb to talk on the whole transgender attacks on transgender, because what I did notice, well, they immediately went after the transgenders in sports when the Iranian boxer
Yes.
incident happened. So go ahead, Deb.
It's amazing because my child is transitioning from male to female, and frankly, the medication that she's on isn't giving her any advantages physically over anybody. Frankly, we went through the process of reading all of the documents when we embarked on this, and if you look at the things that this kind of treatment now she's been on this since 2017, so she is now 23. Has
Right.
and the notion that you rush into surgery, she hasn't had surgery. All right, we're just making appointments to talk about that now. So literally treatment all that time on medication, but it can result in osteoporosis. It can result in all kinds of stuff. And that going in because none of these drugs have been tested for this particular application. You're starting to do that now.
Yeah.
So what I don't understand is why they having such a huge problem with this. There have been plenty of transgender athletes, like for example, the boxer that won the gold medal. She lost a bunch of bouts as well. She's not
She
like
actually isn't transgender either. She's female
she's
with
female,
double
right?
Y.
She's
Yeah,
female. I'm sorry, that's I misspoke on that. They
she's female.
saw her, not with makeup on, in a situation where she's competing.
A big girl,
Immediately jumped
muscular.
on it, and
Yeah.
it wasn't just her. There was a woman who played on the American rugby team who had a strong jawline, and the first thing that I saw posted was that she's transgender. And I'm saying to myself, where are these people getting this? And it's just basically they're making stuff up. It's ignorance.
And I think your point about what it takes to transition, I teach college kids, and I've had several of my students, I've watched them transition, and I think, I'm a choir director. So I've watched them go through like the physical change and the voice
Right,
change.
right.
And when I think about like what happens, for example, several of my students have transitioned from female to male. And it is literally when I listen to what happens to their voice during the transition, it is like being a middle school boy. You go through that voice change. Like,
Yes.
it is such an incredibly vulnerable thing. And, when you watch what they go through, to think about the difficult decision to say, like, okay, to get to that place, to then go through the medication, to then go through this process, which is like, it's, as you said, like, it's not an easy process.
No, it isn't.
And to then face that vitriol,
Right.
it is just, it is so incredibly just
So,
inhumane,
so
inhumane.
for someone like my daughter who is autistic,
Mm,
it's really, but smart. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, things that I didn't even know were going on. Okay, like she told me in 2017, actually probably the end of 2016, she just came out one day and said, "How do you feel about transgender people?" I said, "Your parents were lesbians. How do you think I feel about transgender people? I don't have a problem with that. What are you telling me?" And that's when it came out. But totally, honestly, COVID did nothing for her in terms of either the transgender thing or her autism. I can tell you that. Literally just starting to get out of the house again now. That's not a lie. I mean, so it's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Not having this on top of it, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
it's a difficult process. And I learned some stuff I didn't know about my own child, like that
Oh, yeah.
she slept with a bungee cord under her bed in case she wanted to commit suicide. You know, I just it blew my mind. I was devastated, and I learned pretty quickly I couldn't be devastated for long because I had to make sure I gave her everything she needed to get through this. But she's resolved and she knows what she wants, and that much, I respect, and I'm going to, get her through this. So it's a hard thing.
And as a parent, I mean, I like my heart goes out to you because I think to hear your child say that's a lot.
Yeah, that was scary
That's
for
a
me.
lot.
That was scary for me. I mean, I went,
Yeah.
whoa. Well, I didn't even know that was happening. I had no indication. Always happy around the house. Of course, I was in a relationship at that time, which I am not anymore. Always happy, always, whatever, and then even before she came out, she was hanging around as her original gender as a boy. Her name was Aaron at the time, which we don't use in the house anymore, but I'm using it for this purpose. Hanging around with these kids that we thought were great. She was getting out, and he's getting out, enjoying himself, and doing all that. He hated it. Hated it. He hated the whole approach these kids had to women. Just was uncomfortable with all of it. But if I look back now if I look in hindsight
Yeah.
to when she was, let's say, 5,
15. Oh, okay.
5. Let me go back
Yeah.
even further. And I look back now and I say, this kid was never comfortable in the body she was born in. Never. Because never did I know she's never actually stood up to go to the bathroom. I know that. I know that as a parent. She's told me that. It's all the things that you say. I used to say, there's something different going on here. There's something different. Of course, my friends would go to me, "You think everybody's gay because you're gay." I said, "That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying she's gay. I'm saying there's something different going on here. It's not like any boy I've ever, seen, my own nephews and nieces. I've watched these kids grow up, and I knew something was there, and I knew sooner or later it was going to come out. And I didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't have the foresight. I was too close to it. That's the problem. It's not that I'm not knowledgeable, but when it's your own
No, but
kid,
I
it's
think
a
as
different
parents, it's
situation.
yeah, yeah.
So it's tough to watch people go through that, and to have that complication of being afraid of the world is on top of that is scary, you know?
Well, one thing I want to mention too, and you mentioned, having your kids, is this whole idea of making IVF illegal. You know,
That's how
you,
I
you're
had her.
saying you're saying you have to have kids. You have to have kids. Those people that don't have kids, this is JD Vance saying that people that don't have kids are, sucking off the teat of whatever, or they're just freeloaders
Right.
basically. And then, you know, the only way then my wife and I decided not to have kids because of her health.
Right.
Okay. And It was the only way to do it is IVF. So you're telling me that if we did decide to do it, listen, that's our business. What Deb does is her business. What you do is your business. As Tim Walsh says, mind your own damn business. This is medical.
Right.
Okay. Why do you care? Why do you care? And
Again,
in
I can't imagine
yeah,
why anybody would care. I don't really care what my neighbors are doing. Whatever
right,
is going on, it's their stuff to do. I mean, I'm their neighbors. I talk to them. I talk to their kids.
right,
I don't need to know any more than that. I don't need to know any more than what they want to tell me.
right. So this and another thing with the GOP, the GOP being a member of the GOP is very, very easy. Just be a hateful person. Okay, just be hateful because look at what Donald Trump did basically. Oh, first off, he trashed women, he sexually abused women, okay, and now he's trashing immigrants, literally calling them garbage.
Right.
Okay, and Shoshana, if you want to see it, it's okay. There is a MAGA pastor who he is equating women to pigs with
Nose rings.
gold
Gold
nose
nose
rings.
rings.
I'm like, all you guys do are insult people, and people just have basic rights to live and do what they want to do.
Yeah.
You know,
He's putting
I
the women's vote now as another woman is coming forward to say she was sexually abused by him. You know, it's incredible. Hey, I'll be your protector. Yeah, yeah, you sure you will, brother. Yeah. You know, it's again, it's more of the same. He's in this rally. What did that guy say at the beginning? I showed you the clip. You know,
right.
there's literally garbage floating in the ocean. I think it's called Puerto Rico. This is a guy who's at the Trump rally in New York, and people are telling me he's going to win. I don't think he's going to win. Just don't.
Donald Trump basically calling Detroit a garbage scow,
Right.
calling Milwaukee garbage, calling this town garbage. How are you courting the vote exactly?
And oppressing
So
people, you know what? That's the worst of everything he's done. Is there's the whole, demonizing people so that there's just hate for people that people don't even know these people. How do you hate people you don't know? It's insane. It's poison, is what it is. And social media does not help that situation. I can tell you that.
no,
Neither
it
of my
doesn't.
kids are on social media. They don't. They hate it. They think it's ugly. You know.
It is.
So the whole reason that I did this, well, one of the seeds of it, I always thought about doing it, but one of the seeds was when one of the Suffolk progressives actually said that they're concerned. You have no reason to be concerned in terms of the transgender issue. The laws are staying the same. There is no way to expand this. This is in the Constitution. We're not
Yeah.
looking to, you know, have. Let me dispel this too. So, Deb, if first off, look, are there rules, are there laws regarding age restrictions in terms of gender affirming care?
Yes, there are. I mean, even in Massachusetts, you have to go through steps to get to where you're going. Okay, now when
Right,
my child did it, she was already 17, so that wasn't an issue. But there is, I believe, you can't have surgery anywhere until you are of legal age and you make that decision to have it. Now, my child has not rushed into that. Um,
right,
so, and I think again, part of that is the autism and the fear and never having been under the knife before and all of that stuff. So
right.
she's not rushing into that. We're just getting to that process now. But it's not like people are getting up one day and deciding they're going to be, oh, I think today I'm going to switch over and be a guy,
It's
because
not like a nose job.
yeah, it's not.
Like,
It's
Right.
not. It's absolutely, it's not like breast reduction surgery and it's not like breast augmentation surgery, okay? It's
yeah.
a whole different ball game, in other words, let me make this as clear as I can for people. It doesn't start with your organs, it starts in your brain. Everybody's
Right.
wired differently, okay? And that's the way it is. I've been a lesbian since the womb, and everybody knows that. And that's what everybody used to joke me. You've been gay since the womb. I have. But my brain is wired differently than other people. That's really what it boils down to. And nobody in this country is the same. Nobody. Nobody thinks the same. No one acts the same.
Here's another thing, and I'm hearing this. I can't believe I'm hearing this, but I'm hearing this. I'm a 12-year-old boy. I decide to be a girl one day. New York Prop 1 tells me I can be Loretta Stan, and I just go out there and play girl sports. That's not how this works.
Oh, God.
In order to be considered transgender, you have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria.
Right.
And
okay.
Yeah, it's just so much of it is just, I think, quite frankly, most people have no idea how schools work, including even as parents, you may not fully understand the inner workings of a school and the procedures and all of those things. And it's very easy to confuse people.
It is.
If you're not on the inside of a school and really living it, you just, it's easy to confuse and scare people and spread disinformation.
It is.
And disinformation and fear when it comes to your child are very powerful tools.
Right.
Right.
And disinformation and fear is deadly for some people.
Yes.
It really is. And it just, and it's amazing because I see more and more of it as we get closer to the election even. It's insanity out there. I look at stuff and I end up scratching my head half the day going, who is starting this stuff?
Right.
And it is directed at immigrants, transgender people. Now it's really ramping up towards the end. The ugly is getting really ugly now. I don't think they have anything else to go on, so that's what they're doing. But
right.
Yeah.
And
I think it's our job to call it out, to name it for the lies and the bigotry that it is.
Yep.
And I think sometimes this is where I'll be very honest. I think the Democratic Party and many politicians fall short. Is they kind of no, just no.
Exactly.
Call it what it is, name it, push back, and explain hey, they're doing this because they don't want you to have nice things.
Right.
That's it. Rights, equality, all those things. They don't want you to have nice things because that takes their power.
Right.
The end. And debunk the argument with plain language and without fear. So that way people can feel confident in trusting you and this process again.
Right.
Because people have no confidence in the institutions or the process anymore because there's fear and fascism coming from one side and a very weak defense coming from the other.
Right.
And that is problematic.
When I look at, when I look back now at COVID and I look at what they did to Anthony Fauci, I say to myself, what, are you kidding me? I mean, I still hear it now. I still hear people now. And I go, I remember this guy when the AIDS epidemic hit. And I remember he was the one person that said the gay people have to be at the table for this because this is affecting them most of all. And I remember he was taking heat from gay people because you couldn't use experimental drugs back in the day. The gay people wanted to try anything they could to stay alive. This thing was 100% killer. Okay. And I remember all of that. And he was the one guy who opened the door for that. He was the one guy who not only researched for AIDS, but was also treating patients at the same time. And when I look at a guy like Anthony Fauci being crucified and I'm watching RFK Jr., on the other side being touted as some kind of a maverick hero, it's mind-boggling, And
you take a look at who's in Madison Square Garden right now, Dana White and Elon Musk,
Jr.
RFK Jr. and all these people spewing all this nasty stuff. And by the way, I'm going to say this too. I want to make this point. You can be civil and you can do your job and you can defend your people as a union representative or as someone doing your job. You don't always have to be nice.
Right.
When the opportunity arises where you have to stand up. You don't have to always capitulate or, back down.
Yeah. Right.
And this is one of those times.
Yeah, it is
all you have to do is vote. All you have to do is put a little circle. The work has been done for you. All right. Now, some of you the early voting or the request for early voting is done, but hopefully, maybe you all have your ballots already.
I mean, people can vote early
Yep.
through next Sunday. I
Yep.
voted today.
Yep.
Um, and then election day, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. in New York at
Right.
your regular polling place. But one of the other things that is great about New York's early voting law, and we worked really hard on this when it first came in. And by the way, that was another thing that didn't happen until we flipped our legislature. We had some of the
Right.
worst. New York was one of the most difficult places to vote in because we didn't have early voting.
Right.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and in 2019, when we flipped our legislature, early voting was one of the, along with Reproductive Health Act and and transgender protections, early voting was another. And we've worked really hard to expand. When early voting first started, you could only vote like in your town, and they only had like one polling place in, like for the township I live in has 500,000 people, one early voting station. It was ridiculous. So we worked really hard to expand,
Right.
like you should be able to vote anywhere in the county. So if you work in another town, you should be able to vote there, on your lunch hour if you want to vote early. And we've expanded the number of places, so instead of there only being like one for every town, now there's, two or three in every town. So these are the things that, we've worked so hard to get to this moment
Yep.
where we have expansive early voting and we've got this expansive amendment to our Constitution, these protections. And this is a moment for us to grasp
It is.
and really, really, really get this done because it's time.
Yeah.
And the time this is the moment.
Dave and
This
I
is
talked
different.
about this too,
Yeah.
because, you know, voting is just the tip of the iceberg of what people have to start doing here, okay?
Right.
The voting part is easy. Every 4 years, every 2 years, whatever, every 6 years for some senators, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Americans need to be involved in their government on a local level and on a national level because, you know, I'm always saying to people, memes drive me insane. I just have to say this. It's like one of my bugaboos. It makes me insane. I have groups on Facebook and I limit my memes. I just say, sorry, no more for today. We need information and
Yeah.
not just pictures. And Americans need to read again. They need to read legislation. And, I remember a time when I was in the 70s trying to do this stuff. I used to have to go seek out these bills, right? You got them on the internet now. There's no excuse not to understand what's going on where you are. People have got to get back into the whole participation in government thing. It just is critical.
By the way, those sources are there. Or find your own polling station. The propositions for every single state. All of the sources are here.
Yeah.
It's a one-stop shop.
Yeah, and I'd say one really good one, no matter where you are, the League of Women Voters, which is
Yes.
nonpartisan, is
Yes.
awesome. Vote411.org. You can see a sample ballot, you can find your polling place, you can get all of that information
Absolutely.
in one place. And I have so much respect for that organization. They do really great work.
Yep.
And
I wish they still did the debates.
I was
honestly,
just
but-
going to say that.
we do have debates down by us. Like
Yeah.
we have local ones with League of Women
Yeah.
Voters, and they're fantastic.
Right.
I honestly think that allowing news channels to run the debates is kind of a disaster, frankly. I really wish really wish the League of Women Voters was there in the national level, honestly, to look at some of this stuff because
I have nothing but like wonderful things to say about them. And I said to my students, I was like, look, go check out the League of Women Voters so you know who's on your ballot, you know what's going on, like you can really
Right.
do this work for yourself. And I'm not telling you who to vote for or how to vote. I'm telling you how to find the information so you
Right.
can go into the voting booth feeling confident
right.
in the decisions you make.
By the way, you don't have to run for office. There are plenty of people that have never run for office that are very active in their community. Find one thing that you love, one organization that you love. Deb worked with the Human Rights Campaign for forever. I've been a union representative, since 2007 or 2008. So there are ways to get involved.
Yeah,
You don't
absolutely.
have to run for office. And by the way, if you run for office, this is something that drives me crazy, by the way. If you run for office, you run for 4 years, you do your job for 4 years, thank you for your service, not you're a loser, you're a this, you're a that. Shut up. Stop it already. Okay.
Yeah.
There's the competition nonsense. It's a job.
Right.
Yeah.
When they do their
Yeah.
job, they do their job. Thank you. Thank you for doing your job. By the way, thank you, Jamal Bowman, for doing your job. Thank you for Corey Bush for doing your job. And by the way, I wasn't supporting them for the international aspect of their platform. I was supporting them for their human rights,
Right.
uh,
Yeah. And honestly,
portion.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I also think that the way those particular elections went really speaks to why we need campaign finance reform.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you do not want special interests dictating
Well, you know,
how elections go.
Right.
Whether that is, APAC or the NRA or anything.
Right.
Money should not play that role in politics.
Right.
do I think that, and we're going off, the reservation for 2 seconds. Do I think that Jamal Bowman would have won anyway? No, I think he was,
He was
he
redistricted and
was redistricted out of his office.
Yep.
But Corey Bush, she could have won. Okay, she could have.
I'd say I keep going back to state level politics and why they matter so much in New York State. We just got campaign finance. Well, we got matching funds for state candidates. So like if you're raising in small donations within your own district, so $250 or less, you can qualify for matching funds from the state.
Nice.
And that has been a game changer in some of our down ballot races for first time candidates.
Yep.
People
Especially,
who could have never
I
who
would
could not
assume
have raised the
DSA.
money otherwise. If they're raising in those small increments the way we intend this to work. And again, that is something that was not touched until we flipped our state legislature. So in so many ways, the things we do at that state level can be so powerful.
Right.
And again, that comes back to this constitutional amendment. If we can do this here, it could be such a game changer.
Yes.
For
The state
and a
assembly
model for the country.
races,
Yes.
the
I was
state
gonna say
assembly
that it can
races,
spread.
yeah,
Good legislation can spread too, just like bad legislation, right? That's what we want.
Absolutely. And that's I think I feel excited about this ballot, about this constitutional amendment. I really do. And I've been doing this long enough and knocked doors for enough people that sometimes I'm not crazy about it. I'm like, you got to get it done. I have never been since probably Bernie Sanders. I have never been this excited to knock a door for anything.
Right.
Deb was right there too.
I was a
I
Bernie.
wasn't there yet,
I was
but
a
I
Bernie
was
surprise. I was a Bernie support. Definitely.
I was up there with Jill. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
It's okay. It's all right. It's okay.
Hey, I was too until I met her. I only had to go to the Women's March, and I knew instantly I made a mistake. But I was telling Dave I read something today that somebody just couldn't bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton after what she did to Bernie Sanders. I said, what are you thinking? Bernie Sanders endorsed her afterwards. I mean, why did you even think that way? It's crazy.
They're thinking in too personal of a way. It's not that. This is in a way a job and a business.
Right.
It's civil service.
Right.
It's a job.
And actually, the first time I voted on the Working Families Party line was 2016. And it was, before I was a member or changed my party registration to Working Families. Bernie Sanders said, if you live in New York, a great way to send a message is to vote for Hillary Clinton on the Working Families Party line, because you can vote for the same candidate on a line that stands more with your values.
Right.
And that was something that I had never considered before. And ever since then, I have voted on the Working Families Party line at every opportunity that I can. And that really, made me think about this differently, because I was like, okay, I'm not as beholden to this two-party system that frustrates me, and to the Democratic Party, which for me often comes up short and does not push as much as I would like.
So to the people outside of New York and Massachusetts and some of the other states, the Working Families Party is a different type of organization. It works within other parties to select appropriate candidates. And a big part of what the Working Families Party does is work on initiatives such as Prop 1.
Right.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
really tries
not
to
just
push the
candidates.
Democratic Party and candidates running for office to embrace progressive positions,
Right,
whether it's things like increasing the minimum wage or fully funding public education,
right,
Right,
all of the things that we value.
right.
right. And I'm fully with you, Shoshana. If you ever want to go into civil education or like push more for like that kind of civics minded lessons and all of that, I'm
Well,
100%
here's what I
behind
don't
that.
get. I don't understand why we don't have that today. I went to Catholic school as a kid. We had it in Catholic school. We had a civics class in Catholic school. Okay. Now I fully understand that I was, so I was 9 when JFK was killed, and I know the nuns loved JFK. They did. They just did because he was the first Catholic president, whatever. But we learned that voting was important when we were kids. We learned what civics was all about. And I can't believe that slowly but surely they've managed to take that out of the public school system. I think that was done for a reason.
Right.
We were learning that in Catholic school. And when I tell people that, they're saying, "You're kidding me." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm not kidding you. We had it at Arlington. We had it at Immaculate Conception, where I went to school in Revere. And by the time I got to Arlington Catholic, it was pretty much gone. But I got to high school. But when I was a young kid, we were learning all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
So in 2012 was when I graduated. I student taught in Brentwood and I student taught in CI, and cultural diversity was extremely popular at that time. Now, I don't see it being popular now, but it should be in every single school. We are not making white kids guilty
right,
by showing people that they're different.
right,
I think
right,
they'll be okay. So,
That is a big focus in my classroom, again, as a music educator is uplifting and, programming the music of underrepresented
right,
folks, whether it is women, composers of color, LGBTQ composers, just so that way my students see themselves reflected in the materials we're studying. And that doesn't mean we're like canceling Mozart. Mozart's great,
right,
but
right.
there's other stuff too.
right.
Did
And
you
I think
ever
that
have did you ever have censorship issues or your school board comes down and any of that? Okay.
no, I mean when um again I've been at the collegiate level, for like 15 years and it's not
Okay.
really an issue
Okay.
there.
Okay.
But even no, and granted, I think that the world has changed since I was in the public, in K through 12, which I haven't been in a while, but
Okay.
um no, I definitely know that, there it can be tricky. It can be tricky, and depending on the community you're in, like some
If
places are easier than others to navigate because
if
of
you have a true concern for children and for the safety of children, report offenders, physical abusers, sexual abusers. I see it in news stories all the time. We recently amended the Child Marriage Act, which I had been yelling about forever. How can you be talking about pedophilia and legalize it in certain states?
Look, another one that only got signed in or got passed in 2019 was the Child
I know,
Victims Act.
I
And,
know.
and again, it was because our legislature flipped. It was
Yep,
like they would not let that come to the floor for a vote. They wouldn't
right,
let red flag laws come to the floor for a vote. So much got done when we changed who controlled the
Right,
bills coming to the floor in New York State. And,
exactly.
you know, that is why this matters so much.
right. I
And
agree.
that's why they're yelling so much about it. The same, and I try to keep Andrew Gorbarino and Lee Zeldin's names out of my mouth, during this whole thing. But Lee Zeldin is the same man who was telling people that they're going to lock you inside of your house for, vaccine, for
Sent in the
quarantines.
military with needles. I remember that conversation too.
Right. And well, the whole thing, they were talking about, I believe it was a 2012 or 2014 state assembly vote about the Ebola virus. And they were trying to piggyback it onto COVID and scare people.
Right.
over it. This is the same man who was doing that. This is the same man who is an election denier. Okay, why are why anyone in Suffolk Progressives, Long Island, the Working Families Party, anyone is listening to any of this is beyond me.
I know.
I wanted to come on here and let everyone know. And I know people really respect Shoshana, and people who know Deb in the Boston circles really respect her. I want people to understand this is not a political, this is not political maneuvering. I see it. I see it at my office every day. You know, there is a possibility of discrimination against those. Ableism is all, he's just, I don't know why, Tashana, all of a sudden, this attack on the autistic, the attack on people who are on the spectrum is off the charts right now. You know, there is an ADA in place. However,
You know why?
there are times they have to catch up.
Because
You
they
have to catch
can.
up. They
Because
can
they
do
can.
it.
Because autism isn't a kind of thing where you can define it by a symptom or
Right.
whatever. It's a very different kind of thing. There are different levels of being on the spectrum. Okay,
Right.
there are
Yep.
all kinds of things that go on there. So people can make the comment, oh, they're making that up because it's kind of that kind of an illness. Still, people don't really realize or understand how it happens or comes about. People can guess at why my child became autistic. I can tell you, when they were young, the big thing was it was vaccines, which was, debunked a million times. But no one really understands. There's just not an understanding in the general public of what the disability is. I understand it.
Right.
I'm seeing things now with my own kid that whether it's from stress or from the result of what she went through with COVID, there are new things that are relative to her autism that are coming out. Now, she has really big sensory issues. She has been pretty much diagnosed with ARFID, which is a eating disorder, but it's not the typical eating disorder. Again, it's a
Right.
kind of a new thing where you are restrictive about what you take because of the texture, or she can eat something for 6 months, and if one day something's just a little different, right, she may never touch that food again. So she's been diagnosed now with malnutrition and is on Ensure on top of us trying to get her past that. Now I just found a great therapist that sees somebody in person to deal with her issues, but I have to find an eating disorder therapist because they're not qualified to deal with eating disorders. So
Right.
again, because autism is the kind of thing that you can't pin it down so neatly, it's one of the things that they can go after you with.
There
You're
are
not in a
times.
wheelchair
Yep.
for the most part. You
Right.
have use
Right.
of your. It's not body. It's up here. It's different.
A lot of what the ADA talks about is about resources, about interpreters, about inclines, or about wheelchairs. But I have a disorder. I've had it ever since I was a kid, and I know that when you have a disorder, you can be extremely apologetic and you internalize a lot of things with the ableism and you don't even realize it.
Right.
So when I see it kind of draws you to it, when you see that kind of abuse, you immediately gravitate to it and go, no, stop, you have to stop. When I saw that disability and age were two things that were added to this bill, that strengthens it even more. I know it isn't talked about as much, but the elderly on Long Island, they have been built over and over again. They really have. And on top of the issues with COVID and housing and poverty, especially I want to emphasize before we finish this that it's not just New York City and Long Island, but Shoshana's on Long Island, I'm on Long Island. So a lot
It
of
is.
what
It's
we
statewide,
hear
yeah.
a lot of what we hear is Manhattan and Long Island. But if this passes, guess what, guys in Mid Hudson or another, conservative area, you guys are protected too. This is a
Yeah.
statewide
Yep.
thing, and it is becoming national as well. There are over 20 states that have some form of this in here. And as Shoshana well knows, and Deb well knows, and I am learning, you know, even with my experience, this is a extremely slow process, and you just keep going. And you mentioned Bernie Sanders, the Amendment King. You keep going.
Right.
Patience is a virtue. You just keep going. If you have a roadblock, you figure out a way around the roadblock and you go. And I hear all of this all the time. Deb hears it all the time. What will happen if? What happens if Trump wins? What happens if this would, first off, I don't think it's going to win, honestly.
I think he is, but when you think about it, I can understand where the nervousness comes in, okay? Because you're
I
being
do
fed a
too.
bunch of shit from the
Absolutely.
polls. I'm sorry, but the polls are wrong. I know they are. I know, look, we don't know who's being polled. We know none of that. And I am sure they're not polling Republican voters who are voting Democrat this year, this cycle. I know that. It's a game. All of this is a game, and there's all kinds of misinformation at the end of this thing. We heard it all through when Biden won. We heard how bad the polls were, right? We
Right.
heard Obama's second
Obama.
term. He was
Yep.
going to be a single term president, okay? We
Yep.
heard all of that. Now we know some stuff that we didn't know before. But
Right.
here's the deal. Here's the deal. I'm going to tell this to everybody because I want everybody to vote. You cannot allow Donald Trump to win because whatever he passes on a national level, there will be no way to fight back on a state level. If he passes a national abortion ban, what you have in your state won't matter. He's intent on doing that. And people say,
Right.
he said he's going to send it back to the states and leave it be. Well, the guy is a liar from the get-go. It's in his DNA.
Yeah, the whole like, I can't believe the leopard ate my face. That's what that is.
Somebody says to me, "What?" Well, I said, and so let me understand this. I said, so if you think if the Republicans control the legislature, have enough people there to pass a national abortion ban, you're telling me that Donald Trump's going to veto it? I don't think you should think that way.
So yeah. So they always talk about the rights of the states, the rights of the states, the rights of the states. Oh, we're passing a federal abortion ban. Screw the states. Okay.
Well, that's
So
what that's again, like I said, I think the Republican Party is shameless now. I think they have
right.
absolutely, with no guardrails, they absolutely have no character whatsoever. I really
It's
don't.
funny to bring it back, like before I know we've got to close out, but I remember when Lee Zeldin, he was my congressman before he, ran for governor. He was trying to get a concealed carry reciprocity law passed through Congress. And, New York has very strict gun laws. And, we met with him along with gun violence survivors, as well as
Okay.
Second Amendment supporters. And I said to him, I was like, I thought you were a states' rights guy. I was like, isn't that the whole Republican Party thing, states' rights? I was like, you're proposing something that will completely, defang, and have make New York's gun laws have no teeth.
Right.
I was like, so much for states' rights, huh?
Right.
And he never met with me again, and that's okay. That's okay. After that, we never spoke again. But
Speaking of guns, in Massachusetts, we have gun laws that are pretty good too. But Maura Healey, I got to give her credit. They passed more stringent even than what was already here.
Yeah.
And usually they give a period of time so people can counter that or, try to file against having it implemented. She found a freaking loophole and signed it immediately and put it into law. I don't know how the hell she found it, but she put the thing took effect immediately. The new gun laws took effect immediately because she knew that there were Republicans trying to find that one thing that they could delay the implementation of it and eventually kill the bill. That's what the whole goal was. And she found a way through that. And I give her credit for that. She took a lot of shit, but she got it done.
I have my issues with Governor Hochul here and there, but I remember when she was working on the anti-gun legislation, and for Clarence Thomas of all people to talk about how coliseums or how sports arenas are potentially appropriate places for firearms.
You got to be kidding me. You know?
Has he ever seen the YouTube videos of people just beating each other to a pulp? Add guns
Football
to that.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah, add guns to that.
I'm so sorry. I have to close this out in a couple of minutes just I
That's
gotta
okay.
get my kids to bed and all of that. But
Real quick. If I could go to the restroom and then we come back and we do a quick plug. We do like a quick TikTok video,
oh
like
yeah.
2 minutes, 2
Okay.
seconds. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll close this out and then we'll do
And then
that.
I'll put it on the TikTok channel.
Yep. Yep. So this will go on YouTube and then just the promo will go on YouTube. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
How old are your kids?
They are 15 and 12, and I need to make sure that everyone has showered and everyone has done their homework and gotten everything done for tomorrow. And yeah, I gotta like, otherwise no one will ever get to bed, you know.
I know how that works. Yeah. Mine are 28 and 23 now, but I remember those days well. I remember those days well. But the homework part especially. Yeah, that was a thrill. But yeah, I think this is a great thing. I think other states can look at this and
Yeah, I think it could be a great model.
I really do. I when I read it, I was amazed and I was happy it was as expansive as it was. I said, I look at a lot of this stuff and a lot of it is kind of like wishy-washy. It's good to see something that's not wishy-washy,
Yeah.
But these are the kind of times that can inspire you to not be wishy-washy, honestly.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah, and I mean the people, the senators and like the senator who is sponsoring this bill, who sponsored this amendment, is Senator Liz Kruger, really like someone I've gotten to work with, and speak with because she chairs our finance committee and the work I do is, asking for budget finances for childcare. And, she's pretty darn smart. Like it's a great piece of a great piece of legislation that was passed, and I think it will make New York a much better state.
yep. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop this one and I'm going to open up a new one, okay?
Yep. Yep.
So give me 1 second.